We have Dr. Etta Gant here with Etheridge Counseling in Charleston, South Carolina, here to talk about anger, the quote unquote bad emotion, the one of the emotions that gets the worst rap, I would say. Would you agree? Do you feel like anger is a
Totally.
misunderstood emotion? If so, why? What's your take on anger?
Yeah, well, we have, of course, seen like negative effects of anger. Physical violence, aggression, putting someone down, hurting feelings when that anger has gone like out of control, which I would argue a lot of times that's kind of not true. That's the anger sitting on top of something else, or we've gone into like rage mode. But that's kind of under the umbrella of anger, and that's where it gets a bad rep because it can hurt people.
Because it can hurt people. Yeah. Well, so what would you say to somebody who comes in to work with you in the counseling room, in the therapy room, and says, I've got all this anger. How do I stop feeling so angry all the time?
Well, yeah, I usually start by validating the anger because it's there for a reason, whether it's been built of years of hurt, or shame sitting on top of something else, or whether it's something like directly applicable right now. I'm angry because I'm stuck in this job and I'm treated terribly and there's no way out, something like that. So it's exploring the sources of the anger, and allowing room to get a lot of that out first so we can see more clearly kind of what the message is under it would be where we start. But a lot of dumping. That's what therapy is for, is to get a lot of that out. Because it is valid, it's there for a reason. We need to get it out. So whether it's venting in therapy or it's exercise or it's journaling or lots of other things, but anything that helps you get it out.
Get the emotion moving, so it's not just kind of stuck, I guess. So you would kind of start with like letting somebody kind of unload the tension of it. But you use the word, what's the mess? You use the word message. And I know, because I work with you, that the title of your recent blog series on emotions is called Don't Shoot the Messenger. So can you tell me a little bit about why you named your blog series Don't Shoot the Messenger and what that means? What is the message of anger?
Because our emotions are telling us something. That's why they're there. And so listening to what that message is instead of like ignoring it, pushing it away, or letting the emotion consume you, but listening to the message to figure out how to channel the emotion. So the thing with anger is that it's incredibly powerful. It can help us to protect ourselves, to set boundaries, to stand up for ourselves or our loved ones. It can be really healing, especially when you have a lot of trauma. If you're carrying a lot of excessive guilt and shame, the tendency to internalize that. Anger helps to get that out and actually see the situation more clearly instead of, I do everything wrong, I did this, blah, 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 blah. That's rarely true, especially if you've experienced some sort of trauma or abuse. Connecting with that anger, even if you can't share it actually with the person or situation that caused it, getting it out in therapy or journaling or talking with a friend that you trust is very, very valuable, can be very healing, can help you see things in a new light. Anger is incredible. A lot of clients, sorry, you go ahead.
What you're saying is, I loved what you said of like anger helps us externalize what's been going on internally. And that makes a lot of sense. Like you said, anger can help us protect ourselves. Well, if we're starting to feel uncomfortable with something in our environment, anger, what you're saying is like anger can be the energy towards putting our foot down or, putting up a barrier or boundary of sorts, or protecting ourselves, or standing up to an injustice, or it's that externalized energy of something that's happening internally. So what would be like some productive responses to anger, or how can we like understand our own anger a little bit better and know what to do with it?
Mhm, mhm. Well, I think we have a really hard time understanding, especially for those of us who are people pleasers. So in that case, a lot of times that anger is sitting way under the surface, and it usually manifests as really strong anxiety because we are ignoring our anger when our boundaries are being crossed, all of those things. And so connecting with that can help us break some of those patterns so we can set boundaries and have more healthy relationships, have more empowerment in our life. And when we're able to communicate that effectively and clearly, the change can be positive for the other person too, or situation, whatever it is.
Mhm.
The boundary setting is one of the like strongest cues we can receive from anger. So yeah, that's I would say that's one of the most important things. But remind
Mhm.
me what the full question was.
Yeah, well, just kind of opening up the floor for that. But well, as you're talking, I was really thinking about, this pattern I see in recovering from trauma, where
Mhm,
trauma often takes away a person's voice and
mhm,
autonomy. And so the pendulum kind of sometimes when you're healing from trauma, the pendulum kind of swings the other way sometimes where you've had maybe been forced to be quiet or been forced to do something that didn't feel right. A lot
mhm,
of times in the healing process, you're swinging the other side
mhm,
where you may feel a lot of anger. And it's kind of that
mhm,
backlog of all of that protective energy you didn't get to
mhm,
feel, get to express. And sometimes in the healing process, you might go to therapy and start tapping into a lot of that anger that you haven't felt in a long time that's
mhm,
been manifesting as anxiety. And sometimes
mhm.
but eventually through prayer, I think you kind of balance out to where you're not going to feel anger all the time. But
Yes.
sometimes, yeah,
Sure.
there's backlog
Mhm,
energy or,
mhm,
all those times that you've had your boundaries crossed and it's just kind of built up over time.
mhm, mhm.
Um,
Yeah, and anytime anger feels excessive or like it's coming on really strong, we usually kind of have to feel that or process that first before we decide what to do with it.
I can see that where if you're kind of feeling anger and acting right away, that's kind of where you could end up hurting yourself or
Mhm,
someone else. But
mhm,
first processing what the message is, the underlying
mhm,
message of anger, and let
mhm,
that inform what you do mindfully moving forward. Yeah, that
mhm,
makes a lot of sense.
mhm,
Well, I love it. Yeah, I definitely think anger can be very misunderstood in our
mhm,
culture, gets a
mhm,
bad rap, but can actually be a really important step in healing and informing you of what your values and boundaries are.
mhm.
So thank you so much for unpacking that. That's part 3. Anger is the part 3 series of Don't Shoot the Messenger, or Don't Blame the Messenger. It is 4-part series on emotion. So thank you so much for being here and talking with us.